Howdy, I'm Robert McKay. The channel is, of course, Whiskey for Beginners. As I look at the camera, I think I should turn my laptop a bit. If you will pardon the interruption, I think I'm going to do that, get myself kind of more a little bit in the frame. This is what you get with a thoroughly amateur production. I'm a little better. I'm still off to the side. Oh well. Sometimes, now this is just me. I'm amateur. I'm not a professional. But sometimes having the person who's doing the talking directly in the center, I don't think looks quite as good as having him a little offset. If you think this looks stupid, I'm a thorough amateur. Life goes on. But what I want to do today is talk about a hypothetical point. While I sip on some Balcones lineage barley whiskey, they call it Texas single malt. Single malt is a British term. The name is single malt, therefore when I give the name, that's what I do. But what it is barley whiskey, and the single just means it's from one distillery, and it's 100% barley mash bill. And boy, is that fruity. But I want to talk about hypothetical today. What would be my 5 favorite whiskeys if I could afford them or find them? Well, I'm flying extemporaneously here. I don't have a list in front of me. I thought about making one and going down it, but I thought, nee, I'll do it this way. I'll fly off the cuff. I'll fly by the seat of my pants, speak off the cuff. Shall we mix our metaphors? Thank you very much. I've been watching too much beautiful bourbon. Go watch that channel. KC, when he says it, it sounds like Casey, but it's KC, is the funniest dude you ever saw. The dude is hilarious. And he knows he's whiskey. He's whiskey, some sort of whiskey steward. And I don't know much about it. He's mentioned it, but he doesn't mention it all the time. The man does not have a big head, but he's funny, and I've been watching so much of him. I'm doing weird things too. Except for him, they're natural. For me, they're coming because I'm thinking of him. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten why I'm here. When he reviews a whiskey, he drinks it straight, then he puts a little water in, and then he puts it on ice. And he has what he calls a gorgeous ice sphere. And it is so funny. But he knows what he's talking about. And from what I can tell, he hasn't said much about whiskeys I know. But from what I can tell, the dude knows his stuff. And he's funny. Did I mention he's funny? And apparently somewhere he has done professional photography. I can't remember for sure, but judging from his photos, I would say he has. And each burbcast, as he calls it, begins with a wonderful photo of the bottle he's going to review out on a bench. He did a whole series of benchmark bottles, each one on a bench. And I thought that was just great. That was wonderful. That was hilarious. But he does these beautiful photos. And that's why I'm acting weird. I can't do a very good English accent. The only way I can speak even remotely like an Englishman is to thrust my jaw forward. And that's not natural. I saw an episode of Death in Paradise where I realized, wait a minute, this dude's jaw is just shoved forward, his lower jaw. And I tried it, and suddenly I sounded at least somewhat like him. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the cows were singing opera. It was a weird ranch. Meanwhile, my hypothetical list of favorite whiskeys. These aren't going to necessarily be in order. As I say, I'm doing it extemporaneously. The reason these are not on my official list is either I can't find them or can't find them regularly, or I can't afford them, or both. So, the first one, and I don't have the bottle by me, is a Knob Creek single barrel store pick from Kelly Liquors here in Albuquerque. That stuff is gorgeous. It's honey all over the place, honey butter, cinnamon, all the dark notes that I love. It has a finish that won't quit. I did a review of it. I recorded it several minutes ago, 3 videos back. I'm making a whole run of videos today since my plan to run errands fell through. I'm stuck at the house, so I might as well zoom through a bunch of videos. But I made a review of that a few minutes ago, and I took a sip and didn't take another one and kept talking. And 3 or 4 minutes later, I could still taste the oak of the finish, the chocolate of the finish when I focused on it. Very delicious stuff. But it's a store pick, so it's going to run out. I'm surprised they haven't run out already. And I'll never be able to get that whiskey again, so it has to be hypothetical. Next is Balcones True Blue Straight Corn Whiskey. A lot of their stuff is not straight whiskey because by definition, by law, straight whiskey has to be at least 2 years old. But in their climate, 2 years is a fair amount of aging. Now, because of the climate, because the aging happens faster, it happens differently than Kentucky or Tennessee. There are some chemical processes that, no matter what the climate is, take time to run. And so those processes don't have time to complete in the Waco climate. And so Balcones is different. But it does age in that climate. It ages fast. And so their baby blue corn whiskey, which I think is as good as any bourbon I've had. Well, as good as a bourbon, as good as a good bourbon. I will say it's correctly eventually. Is it eventually yet? It's 1 year, and it has the color and the flavor of a 3 or 4 year old bourbon. And it's corn whiskey too, which means it ages in either new uncharred barrels or used charred barrels, and it's only a year. But the True Blue is a straight corn whiskey. It is aged, the one bottle I've had, I think it had aged right at 4 years. I could be wrong on that. But it is dark and it is rich. This was a Total Wine store pick, and it was barrel proof. 106.9, I remember. And at the time, that was the highest proof whiskey I'd ever had. I have since had up to 128.2 with a Jack Daniel's single barrel. And if I remember, that'll be on the list, this list. But this True Blue, it was as dark as coffee almost. And remember, it's corn whiskey. It's not in new charred barrels. It's either uncharred barrels or used charred barrels where already most of the flavor and the color has come out. And that's what the Texas, or the Waco climate anyway, does. That's what a distiller gets when he's not manipulating his processes to try to imitate Tennessee and Kentucky. You get something distinctive. And some people don't like it. Precisely because, I think, it's not an imitation of Kentucky or Tennessee. Take this barley whiskey here. It is 3 years old. So it's not well, it is straight whiskey because it's at least 2, but look how dark it is. at only 3 years old. Now they're using, if I remember right, new charred barrels. But the True Blue is fantastic. It's second place on my list. If I could drink it all the time, I would. And then the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof. I've not had their regular single barrel. Eventually I want to. For one thing, it's cheaper. I can more easily afford it. For a pint of the Single Barrel Proof at Total Wine, it's like $35. And so a fifth is going to be 60, 70, excuse me, $60, $70. And that's outside what I can afford. Delicious stuff. Very fruity, very fruity. But the oak in there gives it a chocolate thing. Like you're eating tropical fruit covered with chocolate, sitting in a meadow in the morning with the sun shining in. That's what this stuff reminds me of. But the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof is, oh, it's wonderful. You sniff it and you don't get barrel oak. I've had barrel oak on I don't know how many different whiskeys. I know what it smells like. I know what it tastes like. And the woodiness that you're getting and the smokiness that you're getting on the nose and on the palate of the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof is not that. Now, people have said that the Lincoln County process doesn't impart any flavor to the whiskey. I wonder about that. Granted, it might not impart a ton, but it's spending several days trickling very slowly through 10 feet of maple charcoal. A drop goes in at the top, and it doesn't come out until over a week later. How can it not pick up something from the charcoal? And I think that's my theory, is that delightful smokiness and oakiness of this Single Barrel Proof comes from that Lincoln County process. Now, you're not going to get it on Jack Daniel's Old Number 7. You don't get it on Gentleman Jack. And, of course, those are proofed way down. The Jack Black is 80 proof. I'm not sure. I think the Gentleman Jack is 80 proof. I tried that and I just liked it just barely better than the Jack Black. Man, that's good. Chocolate. That's what I really. That was a dominant note on that sniff. But it's good stuff, and if I could afford it all the time, it would be on my real list. Let's see, what else? Well, my brain is going blank. I was hoping for 5, but if I remember right, I said I might not get to 5. If I didn't say it, I ought to have. Well, my brain is blank. So it's going to be a list of 3. Did I? Yeah, 3. The Kelly Liquor Store pick of the Knob Creek. The now I can't even remember what I said, much less where I was going. The Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof and the True Blue. That was the third one. See what happens when I don't have notes? I get stupid. Some people would say, "You're already stupid, son." And no, I'm not a genius. I've never claimed to be such. I never will. Dirty Harry said a man's got to know his limitations. I know mine, at least slightly. But those are 3 good whiskeys that would be on my favorites list if I could afford them and I could always find them. And that's going to have to do. And so here's mud in your eye.